on the night of November 23rd, 2012. 17-year-old Jordan Davis and three of his friends were parked at a Quick Mart gas station in Jacksonville, Florida. They were doing what teenagers do, being silly on their smartphones, laughing, talking, moving to the music they were playing in the car. And there at the quick stop, they were confronted by 45-year-old Michael Dunn, who objected to the loud rap music blaring from the teenager's car. An argument ensued, and Dunn retrieved a loaded handgun from his car, fired 10 shots into the boy's car, killing Jordan Davis. After shooting Jordan, Dunn drove to a motel with his girlfriend where he ordered pizza, mixed a few cocktails. The next day turned himself in to the police, claimed that he was defending himself against a shotgun-wielding Jordan Davis. No shotgun was ever found. In his first trial, Michael Dunn was convicted of attempted murder for shooting unjustifiably at Davis's friends. He was not convicted of murdering Jordan Davis after the jury deadlock. The state of Florida retried the case, and this time convicted Dunn of first-degree murder. At trial, Dunn's defense team cited Florida's Stand Your Ground law, but on October the 1st, 2014, Dunn received life in prison without parole for the murder of Jordan Davis. Almost 4 years have passed since young Jordan was murdered. His parents, of course, have struggled immensely, not only with grieving the losing of their son, but with seeking justice for their son. Lucy Macbeth and Ron Davis, Jordan Davis's parents, have now made a mission to bring their story and those of countless other survivors out into the open. And they are both traveling all over the country, united in opening up the conversation about not only what happened to their son, but what is happening to far too many young black males in this country. They're pushing and prodding others to talk about the problems of racial injustice and gun violence, and to move into the realm of prevention. Every year, more than 33,000 people are killed by gun violence in America. We can't prevent every one of these senseless deaths, but surely we can prevent some of these fatalities. And maybe a good place to start is keeping guns out of the hands of dangerous individuals who should obviously not have them. Senator Elizabeth Warren recently made the observation that we lose 8 children and teenagers to gun violence every day in this country. If a mysterious virus suddenly started killing 8 of our children every day, America would mobilize and teams of doctors and public health officials. We would move heaven and earth until we found a way to protect our children, but not with gun violence. The power of the gun lobby and our obsession with guns has prevented meaningful action and change. I have followed the crusade of Lucy Macbeth and Ron Davis through the news media over the past almost 4 years, but it was only a few weeks ago that I was introduced to this documentary on PBS by Independent Lens called The Armor of Light. David Mitchell said to me in a note, "Alvin, I think it's something you should really see." It's one of the most thought-provoking examinations of the issue of guns and the proliferation and reliance on guns for our protection and security in this country, and the disconnect, this reliance and obsession with guns and the disconnect with our faith. The documentary is quite powerfully done. I think, and David said, I think you should see it, and I have several times. I have seen it, and I would urge all of you to see it, and we should talk about it, and we should think about it all together. I started to just put the big screen up this morning and show the film and let that be the sermon. Let it do the preaching, but I chickened out at the last minute. And maybe we will do that at some point, but I want to just say a very brief word this morning about guns, about God, guns, and the gospel. Those who defend their Second Amendment rights to own a gun have, of course, long argued that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. In the words of the anti-abortion activist Troy Newman, one of the many conservative figures we hear extolling the virtues of gun ownership in God's name in the film, others include Sarah Palin and Franklin Graham, shown riling up crowds at the NRA rally. And again, the film pushes back against those sort of might is right thinking, gently but assertively pointing out that firearms have never been a biblical entitlement. The film not only cites the danger of trying to play the hero in life-threatening situations, but also suggests far more radically that the love of God should compel all followers of the Christ to adopt a posture of self-sacrifice, not self-defense. We have replaced God with our guns as the protector, says Lucy Macbeth, the mother of Jordan Davis, as she takes a strong vocal stand against the Stand Your Ground law that was cited in Michael Dunn's defense. A law, she says, effectively gives people license to shoot first based on flawed perceptions and irrational fears. The big question this film raises, and we must raise over and over again with ourselves and in houses of God and in communities of faith like this, have we championed Second Amendment rights, the right to bear arms, to stand our ground, over the Second Commandment, thou shalt not kill? In our obsession with safety and security, have we replaced God with guns? Have we made an idol of guns? And do guns really make us more safe and secure? What about all of this God talk about God being the source of our security? Is it just talk, or do we really believe it? Our readings this morning speak powerfully to us about the source of our security and about the power of vision over violence. Put on the whole armor of God, Paul wrote to the early Christian church in Ephesus during the last half of the first century. The people of Ephesus would have been used to seeing helmets and breastplates and shields and swords of the Roman legionnaires patrolling the streets of the city, marching through to demonstrate their authority and to keep public order. And there was a tiny little church struggling to survive in an environment that was largely indifferent, but which at a moment's notice could become hostile. Paul thought that the church, representing the truth of the gospel, was in war with hostile cosmic forces, spiritual forces of evil, forces opposed to the reign of God. You wrestle, he said, not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers of darkness, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And his advice was to take it seriously and to do battle with an arsenal, but an alternative arsenal, We miss that point mostly. The alternative arsenal is truth and righteousness and peace and faith and light and the Word of God. The belt he urged them to put around their waist was truth. The breastplate, righteousness, to put it on, if you will, put on, if you will, the armor of light. It is with the armor of light that we battle the forces of darkness and evil in the world. It is an alternative, an alternate arsenal. And in the gospel reading, we introduced a centurion, the backbone of the Roman army, over 100 men under his command, a man of great power and military might. He says to people, come, and they come. And he says, go, and they go. And he says, do this, and they do it. Here he is, a soldier. He knows all about the armor that Paul writes about in Ephesians, not in terms of a metaphor, but in terms of reality. He knows the real thing, and the real thing is not a pretty thing. Nothing light or easy about real helmets and breastplates and chainmail and heavy shields and spears and swords. You put all of that stuff on, and you discover that a man who put all of that on couldn't move much. An armor-clad knight, for instance, had to be hoisted up on his horse, couldn't even get up on his horse by himself. Armor had its functions, but also its limitations. It actually wasn't much good for fighting. And so here's a centurion who knows all about heavy armor in the Roman army, a Gentile, an outsider. But what commends us to him is not his military might and heavy armor, but his light, his humility, his concern, care, and compassion for others, his faith and trust in God. What is the source of our security? Can guns really keep us safe? Violence is real, but there is a vision that always triumphs over violence. Dare we trust the vision more than we fear the violence? Yes, there's terror and turmoil and trouble almost on every hand. There's destruction, strife, and contention, and justice never seems to prevail. The level of rage, the ton of anxiety, the deep fear, the thirst for vengeance is real, and so we want to have more guns. And we want to kill all of the terrorists with our drone strikes. We want to make things right with our might. So we hunker down, put our wagons in a circle, build up the arsenal, privatize and withdraw from public schools, private schools, private security systems, private health plans, private civic societies, not to share, not to risk, not to expose. But as people of faith, even in the face of violence, we hold to a vision. Biblical faith is always in the business of vision, believing that a coming future from God will prevail over the deathlessness of the present. So the church's business is to watch for the vision, wait for the vision, work for the vision, live for the vision. In faith, we know about the vision that embodies God's own purposes for the world. Since the Exodus event, we've had this vision of emancipation from every form of enslavement and exploitation. Since the poetry of the ancient prophets, we've had a vision of disarmament, of beating swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks and studying war no more. Since the giving of the Torah, we've had a vision of mercy and generosity toward the vulnerable and toward the widows and orphans and immigrants. Since the prophecy of Jeremiah, we've had a vision of a new covenant with God in readiness for obedience to the Torah. Since the oddness of Ezekiel, we've had a vision of a new temple when God would dwell in our midst. Since Isaiah, we've had a vision of a holy city, a new Jerusalem, where every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain brought low, the rough places made plain, and the crooked straight. And the glory of the Lord is revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. Since Jesus, we've had a vision, and we've seen him perform the vision where the blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have the good news preached to them. It's always a contest between violence and vision. In the eyes of a frightened world, violence will always veto vision. But because in our anxiety, we cannot really see beyond our present moment. But as people of faith, let us, my brothers and sisters, hold to the vision. For in the end, the vision will prevail. In the end, God's vision will prevail. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to God.